Scotty. Up now. All right. I asked for information regarding the financing of Minister Kamina Johnson Smith's campaign of the Commonwealth. And I also asked about the 2.6 million pounds of fertilizer that Jamaica received from Morocco this past March. A couple of you reached out to me and asked if I had heard anything regarding those two requests. The Ministry of Finance, that's regarding the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Kamina Johnson Smith's, the financing for her campaign. They have until December 24th to respond. But given that it's the Christmas weekend, they have until the week of December 25th to respond. So hopefully before the end of the year, I'll hear from them. The Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries have until January 3rd to provide their response. And I await both responses with dread. As previously reported, and some of you have heard me talk about this, but so bear with me. But for those of you who haven't, last week, Thursday, the Jamaican ambassador to the United States, Audrey Marks, held a town hall meeting for the PM and the police commissioner for them to discuss the results of their meetings with U.S. law enforcement and the U.S. Department of State. Unfortunately, Ambassador Marks treated us to a poor display of diplomacy and representation that should never be repeated. As background, I met Ambassador Marks in September 2016 when she personally asked me to draft a crime plan for Jamaica. That never came to fruition, and we haven't spoken since. During the town hall meeting last week, Thursday, I asked several chat room, and they were all ignored, resulting in a task for a member urging in the chat room that my first question should be addressed. I noticed that, just to be clear, I put in, I think, 6 questions. The first 3 questions, they were ignored. The 4th question, I believe, I saw where it didn't go to the general chat room. It went to the ambassador's personal chat. And it was in blue. It said, everything else, the first 3 said, to everyone. And then after that, it said, Audrey Marks, and I think it said private or public, and it was in blue. And when I asked people afterwards if they had seen all of my 6 questions, they said, no, they saw the first 3. So I noticed that my subsequent questions were diverted to the ambassador's chat room and out of the view of the diaspora attendees. Essentially, folks, family, I was censored. I mean, I like that. Eventually, one of my initial questions in the general chat room was read to the PM and the police commissioner. And frankly, they provided disingenuous answers. And I tried to follow up and debunk their responses with documentary evidence. Ambassador Marks, in her protector role, would have none of it. And she commented that my question was already asked. And apparently, she was afraid of my follow-up question. I find it rather fascinating that although she could not and cannot answer with any degree of certainty or clarity any of my questions about crime and national security, she tried to protect the people who could provide answers, albeit disingenuous answers. Let me break that down. But some of my people who don't understand them kind of fancy language there. No disrespect, but the ambassador cannot sit in a room with me and talk about crime and national security. What I have forgotten since my retirement is more than she has accumulated over the years. There is no comparison. I mean, I'm bragging, I'm in boss. In fact, I'm bragging, I'm in boss. She can't talk to me about crime and national security. And the 2 people representing Jamaica who could have spoken to the issue of crime and national security, she protected them. And when she did, when they were asked the question, they provided disingenuous answers. And that was the bait, because I set them up. I give them that easy question so they could have given an answer. And they were going to hold them to the answer, and I was going to show the entire diaspora that these men don't have a clue about national security and crime and violence in Jamaica. They don't, otherwise they wouldn't be here. But the ambassador decided that she didn't want no part of that. She's protecting them. And here is something else that she did, which was disgraceful. There was a queue in the virtual meeting for questions to the PM and the police commissioner. Ambassador Marks ignored those individuals and the individuals to ask questions. Embarrassingly and notably, several of those individuals she selected said they did not raise their hand and had no question for the PM or the police commissioner. Obviously, they did not get the memo. Picture these people. On the screen that she's looking at, you have a whole slew of people, a queue with their hands raised to ask questions. They have to ignore all of them, and I don't know if they are friends, but apparently she's familiar with them. So, for example, she would ignore everyone with their hands raised, and she said, Mr. Jones, go ahead and ask the PM a question. And Mr. Jones said, Ambassador, I didn't have my hand raised, and I don't have a question for the Prime Minister. And this went on. It wasn't one instance, several instances. It was laughable. It was laughable. And some of us start talking to each other afterwards and said, she don't know what she had done. If you have a prime people, and if you're set up, because we used to do this, we are living in a people. And you should do that. When you do, you talk to the people before, and you even provide them with a question and say, here's a question I want you asking, because this question is going to highlight some of the successes. But she don't do none of that. Unprepared. Right? Hold on a second. Carla, go ahead.
Hello?
Carla. Yes. Big Valicious, listen, but just big you up. Call my back because now get them in this thing now. We have a money, we have a talk. We have a
something pertaining to you about the people in Jamaica want to hear the evidence for their crime. So
they tell you that, so they want me there.
yeah.
Well, tell them to tell the authorities.
They're here because they're listening to your program in Jamaica.
Okay. Well, Jamaica people, careful now. Man from Waterhouse, man from Toile, man from Compound, man from Maxwell, speak that.
I will mention you and the family when I get.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know if it's anything.
You're on.
come Fireman. Meet your mic, Fireman. Well, everybody should see now. I said, I saw the thing said, but whether I'm going or not, we still have like to fight because people need to know what's going on, and we need to provide solutions to them. And there are
Reggae Global.
You're on air. You're on air. You're on air. Mute your mic. You're on air.
We can hear. Yeah. So what happened is that if they take the solutions from the gentlemen who are my guests or from me or from others, I don't care. I just want to see the crime rate subside. I just want to see it reduced. I want to see people can walk free and do the things where free people do. I don't want people live in fear. I want people to be able to live with them doors open and them windows open. All right?
But the State Department of all Americans have to go there.
Yeah, not just that. I mean, the Canadians too, and some other countries in the past. And I suspect that, you know, as things get worse, more countries will join the queue. So, but anyway, calm back, see?
Yeah, all right, thank you.
Big up yourself. Yeah, people, that was my dearly beloved cousin, Janet. Come from Russell Road, but now she lives in Queens. Janet, I hope you don't give it too much about your personal information. Anyway, like I said, the ambassador, it was a terrible display. So she called on our folks, them couldn't answer the question because they couldn't ask any questions because they never raised them hand and they never get the memo. They don't have no questions to ask the PM. So that's not how we do business, folks, because I've worked overseas representing the US government as a diplomat for years. And this is not how business is done. This is amateur hour. I tell you that. All right. But anyway, Ambassador Marks, this message is for you. Me, I call you out. You have to do better than that. You're not here working for yourself or select members of the government. As difficult as you may find it to sum up, you work for the Jamaican people. Right? And your vote and compound to interact with the diaspora. Your mandate is all of the diaspora, not just your friends in the diaspora. Those who agree with you and those who disagree with you, because at the end of the day, we want to see you succeed. But you cannot succeed by yourself. You need us to help you to succeed. And you need to do it without any influence of friendship, fear, or favor. Now, based on my experience as an American diplomat for several years in the Middle East and Africa, I have some sound advice for you. Hold on a second. And then a caller. Yes, caller. Welcome to Reason with Rattigan. Yes, sir. You like how me attack? Well, you got to love it next time.
Ratty, hold on, Mr. Rattigan.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Rattigan, if I may, you have to basically structure the program.
No, hold on, fireman. Hold on, let the talker finish. Yes, talker. I mean, yes, caller.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because them understand that as long as the people in fear and ignorance, they can get away with their stupidity. You understand?
Yeah.
So you and brothers and sisters like you are able to get trained here. Need to focus on Jamaica.
All right. Well, look, thanks for the call. Thanks for the advice. But we're going to move on. All right?
Yes, do that.
All right. Yeah, so like, this is a free-flowing exercise. People just call in and we just take them calls, because sometimes people call and them can't get through. So I understand that. Anyway, like I'm saying, I've represented Jamaica as a diplomat in the Middle East and Africa. And here's my sound advice. Always remember, Ambassador Marks, that you represent Jamaica and that you're compelled to establish a relationship with host country and other governments and the diaspora. Don't ever forget that. Now, what I would suggest is this: you move forward with your responsibilities as far as the next town hall meeting is concerned, and you conduct the people's affairs properly and responsibly. By the way, I hope you have sought legal counsel regarding the diaspora election that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade is involved with. You must remember something, Ambassador Mark, if you don't know, you don't know. You must remember something called the U.S. Foreign Affairs Registration Act, and think about the diaspora members who could go to prison and also face a fine based on their involvement with the embassy, the consulates, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. If you get into trouble, Ambassador Marks, except for murder and a few exceptions, you can always get diplomatic immunity and you will escape legal liability. Instead, you persona non grata, sent home. That's it. Avoid selfishness, avoid protectionism, and avoid unwise decisions. People are watching you. Fireman, welcome to the program. I know you're time out from attending a funeral for a dear friend of yours, and I certainly appreciate your presence here. The listening audience does, as well as the fellow panelists. So what I'd like you to do now is because the topic is centered around public corruption in Jamaica, I want you to take 5 minutes, and give the family, our family, your take on public corruption in Jamaica. The mic is yours, sir.
Okay, all right. If I may, good evening to everyone, or good afternoon to everyone. I'm in the hills of Clarendon at the moment, a community that is called New Longville, and I'm here with my friend Everton Scott. Everton there in the picture. He's visiting us from Connecticut to Cincinnati, Ohio, because he's laid his father, Mr. Stanley Scott, to rest today. So I want to say hi to the Scott family, each and every one of them who are mourning at this time, and to offer my deepest condolences. And I'm sure I'm able to do so on behalf of all of us on the panel here and Reggae Global Radio 24 this afternoon. On the whole subject of corruption, it is a very, very disturbing subject right here in Jamaica. And it's particularly disturbing because corruption is causing the country about 100, coupled with crime, about $100+ billion per year. That's about 5% of the GDP of Jamaica. And that indeed is very, very troubling. And what we're seeing here is a lot of cold cases as it relates to the whole business of corruption that not going through the process. As a matter of fact, they're stalled, and we're not seeing where the relevant authorities are basically making the requisite move to get those cases come to conclusion. Case in point, we talk about the corruption at the CMU, also at the Petrojam refinery. We talk about the scenario where that outfit that look after the children food, the Nutribullah, where a lot of money was there. We talk about the Ministry of Education. No, not just when Royal Reid was there, but after he left with the acting permanent secretary, Grace McLean, and so on. A lot of allegations are there where millions and millions of dollars have been misappropriated. And to add insult to injury, we see where it seems as if the authorities are more interested in going after the small people who are trying to eke out a living. And for me, personally, I find it very, very, very egregious, to say the least. The Jamaica Constabulary Force seems to be hamstrung as it relates to the rank and file member in terms of going out there and fighting crime, which is also a part of the corruption, because they are not being given the requisite apparatus that is needed. Also, I don't know that we are interested in putting the requisite safeguard in place to really push the corruption, the fight against corruption. We have an integrity commission, and certainly in my view, it seems as if there was a mistake there with a particular clause inside there, that no one is allowed to share information until the case is basically concluded. So we don't know if those cases are really actively investigated because we're not getting any report. We continue to see murders that seems as if they're embedded with all sorts of corruption and skullduggeries and so on. And Friday evening in the busy district of New Kingston, we saw where persons walk up to a car, a man highlighted from the vehicle, and 7 bullets was pumped in his head. He died on the spot. And there are so many other things that we are looking at. And you could even broaden corruption in terms of what persons are going through. Take a case in point, the taxi operator and motorists in general. Because here we are, we paid tickets and warrants are still out in for people who have paid those tickets. So all in all, it's not a very rosy picture here in Jamaica. Corruption continues to eat at the fabric of Jamaica. That's my opening commentary.
All right, thank you, Fireman. Defender, welcome. Like the Fireman, please take 5 minutes and give the family your take on public corruption in Jamaica.
Good evening, everyone. Good morning, or good evening, rather, to our distinguished guest who is on with us, Herbert Nelson Jr., and to all our viewers on the MekWi Talk Jeffrey Tavares YouTube channel and Facebook and Twitter. Corruption in Jamaica has been a pandemic in our country from ever since I know myself. The two political parties has continued to rape the economy of this country, has continued to blunder, and nothing comes out of it. As far as I'm concerned, no better barrel, no better herring. We have been swapping black dog for monkey in this country for far too long. And it's time, the time has come that we stop this blame game. Who must go prison, go prison.
Amen.
The time has come for the Jamaican people to wake up, stop this PNP and JLP bangarang in this country. Call a spade a spade. In the 1990s, you have so many scandals happening in this country. And it continue until now. The amount of money they have robbed from poor people could build a brand new KPH hospital. The amount of corruption, mismanagement of poor people money could build so many schools in this country. But black dog for monkey. And nothing is being done. Now this evening, we're going to talk and we're going to put things in perspective. And the time has come where people who thief donor funds must go prison. Thank you, Mr. Rattigan.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Thank both of you, gentlemen, for your take on public corruption in Jamaica. Now, finally, today we have a very, very special guest. You know, I thought there was only VIP until when I went to South Africa. I saw this thing called VVIP and VVVIP. And I said, what that? And I said, no, man. Very, very important person. A very, very, very important person. He said, kiss me neck back. Me never know, say, all of that exists. Well, now that I know that exists, this gentleman I'm about to introduce to you, he's more than deserving of that VVVIP title. His name is Wilfred Nelson Jr. He was born in Jamaica and attended St. George's College. He migrated with his family to New York when he was in his early 20s, joined the U.S. Army, where he served in several positions domestically and overseas, including his stint covering the White House, Secretary of Defense, and the Joint Staff personnel. In 1997, Herb began working in the U.S. intelligence community and continued his employment there for more than a decade. He has a Bachelor of Science degree in Management Studies, a Master's degree in International Relations, and a graduate certificate in Intelligence Studies. He will rely and he will share his experience and knowledge to give us significant visibility into public corruption committed by major Jamaica politicians. When you hear me, people, we are going to talk about the things tonight. Given the nature and scope of his presentation, let me unequivocally state though, and I was instructed to say this by the radio station officials, that his views, that is Rob Nelson Jr.'s views, his conclusions and his presentation are simply that, his own, and are neither confirmed nor endorsed by Reggae Global Radio and or the host of Reason with Rattigan. Yours truly, Will. Now, with all that said, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you, and I hope if we now cook, stop cook. If we need a time, hold up, where am I going? We need to stop now and listen to this gentleman here, because this is a man of the soil. This is a man who came here and has acquired a tremendous amount of experience. I have the utmost respect for this gentleman. And you're going to listen to him talk about people in Jamaica that some of us respect to the bone. And you're going to understand why we feel the way we feel about corruption in Jamaica. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Mr. Herbert Nelson Jr. Take it away, sir.
Yes, sir. And good evening to you, to the two most intuitive people you have on this program that can break down Jamaica in every way that I've been able to understand Jamaica a little bit better. I say understand Jamaica a little bit better because I've been away for a while and I came back to Jamaica 17 years after I'd left. I left in 1972, came back to visit in 1999, or I think 98, 99. But the Jamaica I left and the people I left behind, I found I changed. There were changes that I couldn't understand. But to this day, I've been trying to break things down and to get to understand the people of Jamaica a little bit more. I've kind of divided things into two camps. You have the elites in Jamaica, and there's nothing against being elite, as long as you love Jamaica and you work on behalf of Jamaicans. And you can still tell people about the shoes you wear, the suits, the fancy cars, whatever it is. You know, that's how you get off, then that's on you. But as long as you never forget your people and you do community building exercises within the community that you left, or the community, if you're a politician, that you serve, I have no problems with that. But what I find, and with this corruption, it's nothing new to the political world in Jamaica. The government corruption is pervasive and entrenched amongst the lowest politician at the local level, all the way up to the Prime Minister's office. I didn't hit on the Prime Minister specifically, but here's the problem. If you're a leader, and if you're leading men of integrity, men who are completely enamored with Jamaica and are making a contribution to the welfare of the country, then the reports that I've been seeing and having to deal with over the decades shouldn't be coming out of Jamaica. Unfortunately, we learn a lot of these tricks at the political level from the masters of corruption. And the masters of corruption, the people who everywhere they've been to have corrupted the societies that they've dealt with, either through graft or other means. I'm sitting right here in that country. But in this country, there are people who listen to you, and there are things you can do to effectively fight against corruption or corrupt people. And I've done that over the decades quite effectively. Currently, I'm at the Institute of Caribbean Studies. I'm board chair for the Crime and Security Committee, and I'm also a member of the Jamaica diaspora at that Jamaica Crime Intervention and Prevention Task Force. I'm one of the founding members, so I'm not going to take credit for sitting down and thinking of all that stuff by myself. But what I'll say to you is this: we have a problem, and it's easy to get rid of. If Jamaica were to tomorrow embrace something called predictive policing, and predictive policing, you kind of see we're taking data from all manners of sources within the community, analyzing them, and then using the results to anticipate, prevent, and respond more effectively, not to current crime, but to future crime. It will help us to understand what's going on now, because this is what we're documenting. If every person who's been arrested, stopped, held, questioned by the police is documented, and folks, don't get me wrong, to stop crime in New York, they did some radical stuff, stop and frisk. But then you were stop and frisking more in the minority communities than you did in the majority community, or, you know, more affluent communities, I should say. And if you were walking through the affluent communities and you were a minority, you were most likely to be stopped. But in predictive policing, if you're gathering that data of who gets stopped, who is at the scene of crimes, who is participating in crimes, the type of crimes that they participate in, then it all builds a profile, block by block, street by street, for the police, for the government to understand. In by Kingston 1 or Kingston 2 or Kingston 8 or anything like that, it's going to tell them what's happening on each street. The government can then predict with certainty what's going to happen 2 months from now, because they might have seen a certain murder, and associated with the murder might have been a team of scammers. So when you see a team of scammers involved with murder, then you know that there's going to be retaliation. There's some kind of retributive process. And so predictive policing will document, will bring all that data, all that information together, and then it becomes police intelligence, because now you can predict what is about to happen.
But let me stop you right there. Let me stop you right there, my brother, and ask you a question. And I think the fireman had a question too. I've been texting him, but I don't think he's texting. Let me ask you this. Well, first of all, fireman, do you have a question?
Yeah, during Mr. Nelson's preamble opening comment, I wanted to, since we're dealing with our audience and I want the audience to understand exactly where we are, I wanted to zero in on a point. Mr. Nelson mentioned information that he would come in contact with for him to basically be giving the, talking on this particular matter. So I wanted to be clear to our listeners, Mr. Nelson, what you're sharing with us this afternoon, it's based on information that would come to you based on your work in intelligence, in policing in the United States and the wider Caribbean.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to get it clear, because we want to basically ground the discussion, put a sort of body, a sort of framework there, so people understand that we are not just here talking frivolously.
Okay. Here's my question. It was reported that Minister Chang recently went, and he might still be there, he traveled to St. Lucia. And he traveled to St. Lucia to have talks with the relevant authorities there regarding the crime in the region. Now, that struck me as being rather strange, because if you're talking about crime in the region impacting Jamaica, it would be Haiti with the guns for drug, guns for food trade. It would be Trinidad with the 40% of illegal weapons going into Trinidad coming into Jamaica, and it would be there would be other Caribbean countries and Latin America, but not
Haiti.
Yeah, but certainly not St. Lucia. So my question to you is: do you have any information, or can you provide an opinion as to what role is St. Lucia? What role does St. Lucia play in Jamaican politics, and why is it that you think that the minister is there at this point?
Well, St. Lucia in the past has stood out as the area that is well favored by government officials to launder money, to receive monies that is set aside, slush fund, so to speak.
Are you saying the Jamaican government has a slush fund in St. Lucia?
That's from all the reports that I saw, says that they do have a slush fund in St. Lucia.
Okay.
And that certain people that we are aware of have been attacked over the fact that they were coming to the US and having discussions about that particular slush fund. You're not gonna get this from the crime chief at the JCF, and you're not gonna get it from the operation at the JCF, because they don't pay attention to these things. right? And you're not going to get them taking action against these government ministers to even ask them about it in MOCA or any of the other 3-letter or 4-letter organizations in Jamaica. They seem to see no evil, hear no evil, and speak no evil. Bottom line is, St. Lucia has been fertile money-breathing ground for government people. I say government people because different people go there for different reasons. All right. If we could use our quantum computing system and the deep dives across the banking accounts, that means you would have to hack into it and then look at all the accounts, who's holding the accounts, you know, the group, who signs on the accounts, that kind of stuff. That would give us a snapshot, a very accurate snapshot as to the reason why government people come to St. Lucia.
Mr.
Hold on one
Nelson.
second. I think Conrad had a question before you, Jeff. Hold on one second. Although he asked a question already, but go ahead, Conrad.
Yes, Mr. Nelson,
Yes, sir.
I wanted to put this in perspective for me because sometimes we talk glibly about the two parties. The two of them are the same. This phenomenon that you're talking about in St. Lucia is germane to the present government, or this is a apparatus across whether PNP or JLP administration, or is it germane, as I said, to this administration? Because I am kind of weary about the blanket statement about the two of them are the same and so on without any empirical data.
As far as I have seen in the past decade, it pertains mainly to this government, and this government has been one to when they put it this way, when they take money, it's not 100 or 200,000. When they take money, it's in the millions. And when they go launder it, they have their contact down in St. Lucia. And that money gets laundered not just in St. Lucia, but Barbados and other islands. Used to be the popular place was Panama, but no more because Panama got busted out. So when we speak of rip-offs, criminal corruption, this government is the one that fits that profile. You know, all the other Mickey Mouse things about the PNP, it's Mickey Mouse, but still it's them giving in to the man with deep pockets. Theirs is more a client patron type arrangement. With these guys just take money, big money.
Okay.
And that's what needs to be investigative thoroughly.
All right, we're going to get to that. Jeffrey Tavares, please go ahead with your question, sir.
So Nelson, you can politicians, in a sense, open a company in St. Lucia and launder money through that company?
Yes, that's a popular way to do it. It's either you open a company, you set up the directorship, you invest money in the company, and you know it's whatever services you're claiming, and the company, you pass money through the company, and you show your receipts. The thing that I know that Dr. Monroe was after was trying to find out if all the incomes are being declared and if there's a full financial disclosure from all parties on both sides of the coin. I haven't heard or seen him going after anybody particularly on the PNP side, but I know that he was asking equally for the same information from both sides.
So
And
the next question
contract
before
was elongated.
the next question before Mr. Rattigan take back over is this.
Yeah.
Then we must ask a question then. Is it that the Minister of National Security and the Deputy Prime Minister can only travel within the Caribbean? And is it that he only went, is it that he went to St. Lucia to speak with the St. Lucia counterpart? Or there is something else to this?
You know, it's easy to find out. Now, government, you're supposed to be able to request information under some kind of privacy act. Mr. Rattigan can tell you the particular act. But it would be good to see what he's supposed to, as a government minister, file a detailed prediction of his visit. Where does he plan to visit? How long he plans to engage with that office, and what results he hopes to achieve, right? So if you're going out there, they're going to ask for that. And because if they have to provide security, the security people needs to know where you're going and what you're going to be doing. But if you go there and you go off script and you have private people take you around and do private things, then the question becomes, are you on government business? Or are you doing your own personal business? Now, I don't know what he filed to say he was going to be doing in St. Lucia, but that needs to be examined. And more our media, our newspapers and our TV, radio stations, they need to cover these kind of things. You know, talk about, oh, Mr. Chang is in St. Lucia. He met with the Commissioner of Police there, as well as the Minister of National Security. They discuss, training, intelligence type training, intelligence-driven investigations, or if Mr. Chang is aware that people are laundering money in St. Lucia and they're from Jamaica, then I do hope that that would be on the table so that he can get report the St. Lucian authorities as to who's laundering money and whether or not that person has paid their fair share of income tax on that money in Jamaica.
All right, listen, we have about 2.5 minutes before the top of the hour, and we'll have to take a break then. But I see where the fireman had his hand up. So go ahead, sir. Ask the question, and hopefully we can get it done in 2.5. We can get
Thanks a lot. It will be very short. Mr. Nelson, do you find it odd that the Prime Minister of Jamaica and his Commissioner of Police was in the United States recently, was not flanked by the Minister of National Security? And in a matter of days after, we saw the minister jetting off to St. Lucia. How do you read into that? And do you believe that he should be there, front and center, with his Prime Minister and his Commissioner?
The fact that they even came here to the US to ask for assistance from law enforcement, and understand the law enforcement is the FBI. I think Minister Chang should have enlightened them that the FBI has a limited cross-border authority. The agency with full cross-border authority is Homeland Security Investigations, and they have 1811s and other trained investigators that have done an outstanding job in Jamaica and in the Caribbean. And I know FBI International has an interest there, and I know they've been investigating what happened in Haiti and how did Jamaica come to house 2 fugitives involved with the killing of the Haitian president.
It's 5 o'clock.
So yes, I found it particularly disturbing that he didn't show. And this is a failure within his ministry that he should have been addressing personally.
All right. All right, we have to stop it right there, and then we'll return after the break. Yes, yes, finally, we're back, and we're back with Brunson Jr., senior intelligence analyst out of the U.S. intelligence community. We have Conrad, the fireman O'Brien, straight up Newstalk, and we also have Mr. Jeffrey Tavares, the defender from MekWi Talk. Now, before the break, the question the fireman concerning the travel of the Prime Minister without his national security chief to the US to ask for assistance. And that we can spend, all day talking about that because it's an interesting question with many tentacles. But is there something else you want to add to your answer before we took the break, Brother Nelson?
I know we've talked about that before, and it's possible that the 1980s disclosures by U.S. Embassy cables that the minister was involved or associated with two of his people within his constituents, and that was Ramsharam and Dida Nemhart.
What minister are we talking about that was involved with these gentlemen?
We talking about Dr. Chang.
Okay, so the cables came up, you were saying that involved with these criminal elements.
That's right.
Can you give us a bit more about those cables, what the American government said in the secret transmission from Jamaica to the US concerning his activities?
The American government was concerned about certain members of the Jamaica Labour Party and their association with the drug trade specifically, and also gun running and the at the time low-level murder rates compared to what we're seeing now. So they were identifying the people that they believe were catalysts to that trade, especially drug trade. And we see now that manifested itself to, in 2020 when Minister Tavares got his visa back, and it was annotated that he was a drug dealer. So my question to the U.S. State Department, why don't we identify all the ministers who are in fact drug dealers and not just isolate one person? What we failed to do in Jamaica was to take those investigations done by the HSI in Jamaica to identify these drug dealing ministers.
Hold on 1 second. Explain to my listening audience, especially those in Jamaica, HSI, what's that?
HSI is the Homeland Security Investigation. That is the law enforcement body in Jamaica responsible for that region.
And it's an American organization.
It's American law enforcement
and
organization.
Also, Mr. Nelson, could you explain to our listening public what you said was what was written in Daryl Vaz's passport by the American government?
I think Mr. Rattigan has the legalese, but I'll just make it brief here. His passport, because there was political interference with State Department, meaning that Trump's former U.S. ambassador to Jamaica went to State Department, went to somebody above them, and got Mr. Vaz's visa back after it was taken from him and his wife. And they chose to put in the passport, spells out that he was a drug dealer, right?
Wow.
That he, and to me, that was a slap. I've never seen them slap down executive from another country like that. And so Mr. Vaz stands alone in the annals of the State Department for them to do something that damaging to Jamaica's image. But it didn't seem to faze him any at all. He was doing business with the Americans, and the Americans who he's doing business with were happy with him.
You know what? Let me stop you at this juncture and ask you a very pointed question. We have heard allegations, and I stress the word allegations, about the Prime Minister of Jamaica's involvement in activities, financial activities in St. Lucia. We've all heard it. I haven't seen any evidence of that. I do recall reading something where he said that, or it was reported that he had a company in St. Lucia. Can you expound on that? Can you tell us what's the extent of the Prime Minister's involvement in St. Lucia, whether it's financial, whether it's drug related, whether it's gun running, whether it's completely legal? Can you expound on that? Tell us give us the benefit of your experience, your knowledge, your know-how.
Back around 2020, recall that Minister Tavares had taken a trip to Mexico City. It was in Mexico City that he collected some funds. Reportedly, those funds amounted to about at least $20 million US. That money then was taken to.
Hold on, let me stop you for a second. Gripping. Who did he collect the money from, allegedly? And what was the purpose of the money? What service was provided for him to collect that money?
Allegedly, it came through Russian sources to a Russian bank in Mexico City.
For what?
And the sources understood there had been some chicanery with Jampro and the Venezuelan oil coming to Jamaica and Russian barges and being offloaded onto their barge at sea. In other words, they didn't come into port to do it. They didn't want witnesses. That is the scuttlebutt that's out there. And a lot of this coming from the missing barrels of oil that nobody seems to be able to track or trace.
Mm-hmm.
So with that in mind, and the fact that all the wanted oil, Haiti, St. Kitts, these were all the countries that were being supplied with oil. So it's easy to accumulate that money in record time.
Right, but what I'm trying to figure out, who paid that $20 million for what service? Are you saying it's for oil? And then the second part of that question is, once the money was collected, where did the money end up?
Well, the key to that whole scenario was that the Russian investor in Jamaica, linked to AC Rusal, operating through a law firm in Jamaica, was able to get the sales done and move monies that they would have been restricted under U.S. Restrictions against Venezuela and Venezuelan oil.
Are you talking about embargo?
Embargo, yes. And doing so, a workaround, because there's a percentage of the oil money that goes to Venezuela that was frozen. They couldn't touch that. But they found a workaround, and the workaround resulted in millions of dollars being transferred in Mexico City. Now, that money coming from that source, reportedly, was what ended up with the company being established down in St. Lucia.
What company?
I can't remember. ADMAT, I believe, is the name of the company.
Who are the principals of this company?
Prime Minister is the principal, and his two, I think, 10-year-old and 12-year-old kids at the time were two company directors along with himself. So you have a situation where that money was actually laundered. We meaning myself and the former head of the military intelligence unit in Jamaica, along with two other individuals, a law partner, which you probably would know him. We sat down with the individual who opened the companies and who laundered all the money between St. Lucia and Barbados. And we got that report directly from the horse's mouth. So this wasn't just speculation on our part. This was what we were told directly.
I have a series of questions, but I have to let the fireman come in because I see him. He's sitting there patiently, and I know he's burning up inside to ask some questions. Fireman, your turn, sir.
No, I tell you what happened. Sir Herb has just basically given the answer that I was about to ask for, because in his commentary just now, because I was about to ask these allegations that we're talking about. How hard are these information, and has that information being converted in any way into intelligence? But what Mr. Nelson has just done is go even a bit further to say that they have this hard evidence that was given to them by the person who was directly involved.
Yes.
That information, Mr. Nelson, has it reached officialdom in Jamaica and in the United States of America?
We believe that here in the United States, it reached the Trump administration. And the Trump administration chose to not utilize it in the fashion that we would expect them to want to utilize it. It was utilized to get Jamaica to vote for the OAS president, the current person there now, because nobody wanted to vote for him. Just a few countries. But there were 6 countries in the Caribbean that went against the then president of the CARICOM Council, which was the lady from Barbados.
Mia Motley.
Mia Motley, yeah. They were called to Puerto Rico and they were told what Mr. Trump wanted. That was a certain way. Of course, you have votes in the UN and other places as well. So they've been able to use that information to manipulate our politicians into doing the bid of the United States under Mr. Trump at the time.
Go ahead, Mr. Tavares.
So, in other words, you're saying to us and the wider world that the Trump administration have details on what went on, and they didn't do a damn thing about it. What they did instead was to force them to vote for somebody in the United Nations.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. When you're a politician and you are in a public office, you can then be manipulated with intelligence information that's out there on you. And we believe that from the reports, that's exactly what happened. Now, the fact of the matter is, you do have the source that they utilized down in St. Lucia that was as if we are in this group right now talking to each other, simply because he knew one of the people who we brought with us, and he was at ease in giving us the information.
Let me ask this, Mr. Nelson. You're saying to us on this panel and the listening audience, the viewing audience, that the Jamaican Prime Minister, the Right Honorable Andrew Holness,
Most honorable,
that he established a company, or a company was established for him in St. Lucia, and that monies illegally gotten gain went through within, and is
We're not hearing Mr. Rattigan. I think we have to mute somebody, Mike. We're not hearing you at all.
okay. Yeah. So, Mr. Nelson, are you saying, because it sounds to me like you're saying that the Prime Minister knew or should have known about these funds coming into the account, since it was established for him and his 2 children. Now, can you tell us, to the best of your knowledge, your ability, your contact information, whatever, where did this money go once it got to the company in St. Lucia?
we knew from the contact there that the money was supposed, some of it went up to New York. And we asked, well, why New York? And their family members in New York.
Whose family members?
The prime ministers.
Mhm.
We knew that some of it went into offshore banking in Barbados. So, and of course, some of it stayed in St. Lucia.
Hold on a second. Fireman, I think,
Yes,
no, I think you're moving, right? And I think we're getting some noise. Can you just mute, please?
all right. And I have a question afterward, please.
All right.
Let me just mute.
All right.
Yeah.
You said money went to the family up in New York?
Up in New York, from what we were told.
Okay.
And
Told by the gentleman down in St. Lucia?
Lucia, yes.
Okay.
You know, it
And
was
by the way, let's be clear, this gentleman down in St. Lucia is an unofficial rep of the Prime Minister. Is that what you're saying, that he handles his financing down there?
he handled financing that Mr. Tavares brought to him
On behalf of the Prime Minister?
on behalf of the Prime Minister.
Ah, interesting. Okay, go ahead, tell us about the money movement of those funds now.
Well, at the time, we didn't get much more information about the money leaving Barbados or St. Lucia, or other than some of it came to New York. And we know that the Prime Minister is a frequent visitor to New York because I believe his mom and a half brother is there, if I'm not mistaken. But what we know, that the entire report, the detailed report that was done, this report was handed over to our friends at the Integrity Commission.
No, let me walk that back. You said a report. Who commissioned that report, and what report was this?
The report was commissioned by the PNP.
Mhm.
They spent some good money to get that report done. And it was done on the top 6 JLP people in leadership. The Prime Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. Vaz, and Mr. Robertson, the education, Mr. Reed, and Mr. MSET, the one responsible for the oil, Dr. Wheatley. So those are 6 people I know that we did the investigation behind.
So when you say we did the investigation, you're saying that the PNP commission, who's we?
We was at the time the Cyberpol, the cyber policing organization that's located in London. They did the deep dives, the track and trace. They came up with canceled checks. They saw, different agreements. They looked at the accounts. They looked at the company. And all this information that we put in a report went back to a member of parliament for the People's National Party. And that member of parliament, about a year later, turned the information over to the Integrity Commission.
And what happened after it was turned over?
Well, if you can recall, we came on radio and we raised our voices that they had information that clearly would implicate the Prime Minister with money laundering and other things that were that happened through the auspices of Mr. Vaz. And the Integrity Commission said, "Oh, they'd like to interview you." But we said, well, they need to deal with the report first and foremost, because the report is detailed. The report, I think I mentioned on a program that we did, the report was drawn from the dark web, a lot of it. 90% of the information on the internet is in the dark web. we only see probably 10%.
Mhm.
So when you're doing these types of investigation and you're looking for canceled checks, stuff that has been deleted, you're going into people's computers and you're recreating documents, they will be shocked to know we can bring the documents back to life. So the stuff they thought that they had deleted, we now have it. And we see.
It's safe to say that the US does it.
Absolutely, because they do the same thing we've been doing.
Okay, Mr. Tavares, your hand is raised, sir. Go ahead, please. And then the fireman will ask his question after.
The question I want to ask Mr. Nelson goes back to the slush fund that is in St. Lucia. Is it a government slush fund or is it a private fund that they have?
Okay, let me explain it this way. There's a company that has the account, started the account, and other companies who want to contribute can make their contributions to that fund. And certain government ministers have access to that fund.
So is it government fund or private? And that's what I'm trying to figure out.
It's private funds, but government has access to it.
So it has to be paid back?
No.
Oh.
It's where you get favors done.
Oh.
So you're saying that's part of the 200 million that was allegedly collected in Mexico?
Well, it's possible, but I to that, because it's a fund that is it's refillable. Let me use that term that everybody can understand.
Well, who knows about this fund?
Well, apparently somebody in authority in one of the oil companies down there knew about the fund and raised the question as to whether a certain executive had disclosed the fund when he traveled here to the United States.
Well, no, what I'd like is for you to just call some names, because inquiring minds want to know. I know that people listening to this program, they want to know who. We're hearing that people and individuals and groups and whatnot. Who is involved with this?
They can address the question of the fund directly to, let's say, our friends at the Caribbean Petroleum down in Jamaica, because we understand from reporting.
You mean from Petrojam?
Not Petrojam.
Okay. I know what you're talking now.
They correct me. What's the Caribbean petroleum place down in Jamaica?
Jamaica Caribbean Petroleum Dealers Association? No,
man, not the association. The actual company.
Petrojam?
No, the other one.
Oh,
It's petroleum, I believe.
Yeah,
Western Petroleum. WIPL.
Yeah.
Western Petroleum.
All right. Fireman, go ahead, sir. We cannot see you, but we can hear you. Go ahead with the question, please.
Yeah, I'm actually driving, but I'm asking the question. I'd like to ask a question. This money, in your humble view, Mr. Nelson, this fund can be used at the behest of the persons that it is in their domain, obviously. But the wider question that I want to ask, the United States government is a continuum. It happens that from time to time, the Republican may be in office or the Democrat as it is now. That said, do you anticipate that the government will now continue, the present government will take that up, or it's a dead case? Is it now a dead case, or could one expect the Biden administration to do anything as it relates to this particular case?
To be honest, it's an intelligence matter. If the intelligence community utilized it to manipulate votes on behalf of the United States, I'm not sure if they're going to give that up to State Department. You know, and State Department, for practical purposes, the current Jamaican American who is ambassador there in Jamaica.
Hold on one second. Fireman, mute your mic. Can hear the please. Yeah, go ahead, brother.
This is a good question for the current ambassador in Jamaica, who is at the U.S. Embassy right now. Whether he's going to continue the things that the past ambassador did, or is he going to be more, you know, the straight shooter and ask for an investigation from his Homeland Security investigators to see if any money that allegedly went to the U.S., who received it and who profited from this whole deal.
You mentioned that Cyberpol, that organization out of London, they conducted a deep dive of 6 politicians.
Yeah.
And they produced reports on each of them. And that these reports, to the best of your knowledge, these reports went to Jamaica to people in the opposition. Maybe they were part of the government back then, I'm not sure. I don't know about the dates. And also the Integrity Commission. Correct?
I've seen the reports, yes.
All right. What can you tell us? Just give us a little tidbit, because people just want to know, especially people in Jamaica, because they would like. We have a situation where the Prime Minister came out and he said, "Look, my administration is going to be transparent. It's going to be open. It's going to be honest. It's going to be forthright, and we're going to stamp out corruption with everything that we have, with all our might. We're going to stamp it out." And now we're hearing that there are reports concerning members of his administration and their involvement with criminality. Can you just give us a tidbit on each of them? We don't have to go into detail, but to the best of your recollection, what can you tell us about things that you saw in the report? Now, let me just say this, that I'm not about to say that the report is accurate or not. I'm just saying that there is a report. And so I'm asking you to say, what did you see in those reports?
Okay. I should say I did not see the final product.
You saw a draft?
I saw a draft. I saw bits and pieces that I was asked to comment on.
Oh.
Other than the PM, Mr. Vaz, and I guess by virtue of Mr. Vaz, Mrs. Vaz losing her visa as well, because what the embassy does is say, if you're aware that your husband is up to no good and you don't report it, that means that you're up to no good as well. So by virtue of that, those 3 fell into that category. I believe that Mr. Robertson was also on the embassy's radar from 1980s. And
which Robertson are you talking about? The member of Parliament for Western St. Thomas?
For St. Thomas, yes. He was in the report too.
Very interesting.
Well, you know, he's an old stalwart and he lost his visa. Think about this, all the ones that lost their visas, pretty much in the report.
Well, how about Mr. Philip Paul? I believe he lost his visa. He wasn't in the report.
No. All the GLP, remember now, it's GLP top 6.
Oh.
Right? I can't remember if Wheatley had lost his his visa, but Wheatley was pending all kinds of charges that we looked at, and we were trying to the analysis that he was moving embargoed oil, or his ministry was moving embargoed oil, was a big part of our case against him.
When you mean embargo oil, you mean Venezuelan embargo oil that America did to Venezuela?
Right, correct. That's the only embargoed oil down there. And when you use the Russians, then the Russian, like their Pascal, those guys were under specific sanctions. So doing business with them was restricted. I'm trying to think the other members. Dr. Chang. We went back to Dr. Chang's his associates in Montego Bay. And one of the things is when you have associates who are of a criminal enterprise, you can't wash that off. You can't lose that. So they kind of messed up his reputation. And whether or not they actually now have definitive proof that he's involved, whether they have the canceled checks or they saw bank deposits and withdrawals. Keep in mind, he's the guy who says, when I raised the point of the apartments going up in Jamaica, the high rate, he said he would investigate it. And we've been waiting for the results of the investigation, and we never got it.
Well, let me ask you. Let me ask you this: what do you think, given the fact that the American government collected intelligence on Dr. Chang? That's a fact.
Yeah.
Those cables were released through WikiLeaks, and they went out to the world. The U.S. government, based on what I've been told, that they try to shut down some of these sites so that people wouldn't get to see these cables, and so it's difficult to find these cables now. At the time when this came out, I couldn't look at the cables because I was employed by the FBI, and we were specifically instructed that those documents were classified, and we were not supposed to access those classified documents, even though they had nothing to do with what we were doing. So I didn't look at those documents. But this year, someone they provided these documents to me, and when you read the documents, it tells you that there was a lot of collection going on in Jamaica, and there's a lot still going on. But you could read these cables and you could see the level of information that they had, the depth of the information, that it wasn't just somebody telling somebody something off the street. This was deep collection. Now, given that the cables indicated that Dr. Chang had some association with people involved in the drug trade, the gun trade, whatever, so on and so forth, criminals. What do you make of the Prime Minister then? Well, the Prime Minister knew about these cables or should have known about these cables. Now, what do you make of the Prime Minister then making Dr. Chang Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of National Security?
The rot starts at the top. And when you have both Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister that have this type of involvement, it's not a good thing for Jamaica. And Mr. Chang has been stalwart in the communications and the decision making when it comes, especially to the diaspora. And he's kept the diaspora on the outside, knowing that he kept you on the outside, knowing that any involvement with the diaspora, the fact that we have a certain level of integrity and we've been vetted by the US government, it makes him fearful. And so the Prime Minister, in selecting him, had to select somebody that he knows is he can control. And he can control him because if they are asking for extradition in any way for anybody that he has under his control, all he has to do is sign the paperwork. So it's a matter of command and control, right? And who can keep your secrets?
Well, here's a theory. I have a little theory here, and tell me if I'm onto something. It's been my experience that the U.S. government, they don't send out extradition orders for, for leaders, government leaders, foreign government leaders. They generally don't. There are exceptions, but in the main, they don't. They wait for you to travel to the U.S. or to a third country where they can grab you and they bring you here. Now, given that the cables coming out of the U.S. Embassy to Washington, D.C. concerning the criminal activity of Dr. Chang, or the criminal association of Dr. Chang. My thinking is that the U.S. government is known for having something called a sealed indictment.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning that if they're going to go after you, they can put that charge in front of a judge. Essentially, just put the charge in front of the judge and have it sealed so that nobody would ever know that there is a charge waiting for you. There's an arrest warrant or whatever, they're waiting for you to come. And so Dr. Chang hasn't really traveled to the U.S. since he took over the portfolio. And I'm just wondering, could it be that he's thinking that there's a sealed indictment waiting for him here so he could show up in America and not be able to return to Jamaica? What do you think about that theory?
Well, you would have the same complicity on the part of the State Department and USAID because they're the ones that funds his ministry over $60 million a year to fight crime.
Wait a minute, hold on. He gets $60 million a year to fight crime, and then they said they don't have any money.
That's right.
So $60 million US a year.
Government heavily funds that crime fighting apparatus in the JDF, and with the Ministry of National Security. So you're not gonna see, and that is a preventative, because you don't want crime to overrun the borders of the United States. We are on the southern border, and we're supposed to be protecting the U.S.'s flank. So we have to pay, pretty much to help them with the organization.
So what you're saying, Mr. Nelson, is that based on that, it's a possibility the American government will never touch him?
Quite possible, unless he does something that the U.S. doesn't like, right? It's really up to each of the secretaries of state and to DOJ if there's a sealed indictment when they would want to move. But the bottom line is, if he is cooperating with the U.S., he just doesn't want to put himself in a position where he's going to make a decision that will harm the U.S. or harm a U.S. citizen, and then push comes to shove at that point.
So Nelson, as a former military man, let me ask this question here. Probably 2 years ago, a small aircraft compromised Jamaican airspace, crash landed off the coast of Clarendon, and that was it. Nobody knows about the cargo, the passengers, the transponder, the black box. Now, we do know that there is something called civil aviation, and we do know that the military is also responsible for protecting the airspace. And we do know that at one point, they had a JCF official at Southcom looking at satellite imagery and all of that. this government said that in its crime plan, and let me absolutely stress this, the crime plan, people, is something called Plan Secure Jamaica. They call it a national security plan. But it's a crime plan. It has elements of a crime plan embedded within it. So the Prime Minister is not going to give you a document that, you know, that's entitled crime plan. If you want to know anything about the crime plan, look at Plan Secure Jamaica. Now, in that plan, one of the things is, one of the 10 priorities is territorial responsibility, how to control your borders, right? Your maritime, air, and land. Now, what do you make? Because Plan Secure Jamaica was announced in 2016, implemented 2017, and they earmarked $1.2 billion for this plan from 2016 to 2023. So they've been spending, and the Prime Minister, when he comes before Parliament, he says, "Oh, we have this maritime thing, and we interdicted people at sea for drugs, and we did this, and we did that, and we did that." What do you make of this plane compromising, invading Jamaican airspace, and everything is gone except the plane? The cargo, if there's cargo, we know, you know, whether there's cargo or not, that's debatable, but we know that people flew this plane and they're gone. And we know that the plane should have had a transponder and it's gone. What do you make of that?
I look at the airspace invasion, not just in Jamaica, but Mexico places, with tail numbers. I don't know the tail number on this particular plane, but the tail numbers of other crash aircraft have turned up as aircraft that was jointly used in renditions as well. That means these were CIA planes.
Mm-hmm.
And the question was asked back in 2020 when a couple of planes crashed in Mexico. Was the CIA back in the business of transporting drugs as a liquid asset so that they could use that funding to fund other missions? You have to wonder the fact that it landed on the shore. It was in and out of there. They took it away in pieces because you had people filmed taking away pieces of the aircraft. And then I believe Minister Chang made the announcement months later that the people who landed there have left the island. Anything that comes down in that area, in any area of the Caribbean, is being monitored by USOUTHCOM, U.S. Southern Command.
Mm-hmm.
They have aircraft at Guantanamo Bay that they can scramble if they identify an aircraft in our airspace in Jamaica. And the government wants that aircraft on the ground. They will scramble those F-18s out of Guantanamo and they'll force it down onto the ground. No such thing occurred in this case. And mysteriously, they all disappeared. So what you have is a situation where the plane landed, the cargo was taken off and dispensed with, and nobody can give an adequate explanation as to who was flying, what the cargo was, and how it disappeared out of the airspace without USOUTHCOM or the Jamaica Civil Aviation Authority picking up anything on it.
So, another thing again.
Need that to be investigated, but you know, if they keep it shush,
Another
then
thing again.
look back at other cases that were mysterious as well, and it turns out that they were flying. I believe this was supposed to be Colombians, Colombia registered aircraft. And Colombia is synonymous with U.S. intelligence, just like the Colombians down in Haiti after the attack.
Another thing, Mr. Nelson, is same way. $300 billion of cocaine was seized at the Ian Fleming International Airport. You hear nothing from the Prime Minister's mouth, nothing from the Minister of National Security, Nothing from the commissioner of police mouth. And we're left in the dark. Nobody knows what is going on.
It's the same line that I just repeated a while ago. When you have a situation that the drugs or the cargo belongs to an intelligence service, and it's usually 99% of the time the CIA, they don't want publicity behind their cargo. And they're gonna kill any kind of publicity that could possibly go. Now, if this
So, Conrad, we're picking up sounds from your microphone, from your telephone. All right, cool. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, if this stuff belonged to anybody in Jamaica, then it's possible that the people in Jamaica who was responsible for covering up the shipment was exposed deliberately by the DEA. And since nobody came to claim it, then they couldn't make any arrests. So, it could have been a DEA plant as well. So there's just so much speculation that we can do. But, if we don't know, we don't know.
Listen, we have listeners and viewers. We have 10 minutes to go. Actually, 9 minutes. You drop me a line in the chat room. You can call us. The number is 667-369-8569. Again, the number is 667-369-8569. It's also a WhatsApp number. So those of you outside the US, feel free to give us a call.
I should say this. What has gotten Jamaica in this pickle, in this predicament with violence, with the trafficking? When I say trafficking, drugs, human, and weapons. Same sources. That it's coming out of Trinidad, Haiti, even Costa Rica at one point, and that we send stuff out, they send stuff in, right? The bargaining is going on, especially with the Haitians. We know that there are certain ships at sea, on the ocean, that don't come on the ship rider. We know that those ships belong to our companies. So you have to ask yourself, if you're going to move people or drugs or weapons back and forth, high value stuff, what's to stop them from utilizing those vehicles that do not come on the ship rider, that never checked by U.S. Coast Guard or the British destroyer out there on the ocean?
Hold on a second. Fireman.
Just one question.
Go ahead.
Okay, just one question, because I'm driving. I just want to get this in. Mr. Nelson, based on all that you have said since the opening of the program, and, we have not seen the kind of leadership here in Jamaica to quell this. And we are not seeing the leadership coming out of the United States of America. Is it safe to deduce from all of this that Jamaica is on a path of becoming a failed state?
It's already a failed state.
To me, a failed state is where there's no recognition of authority anywhere. I believe that with the military and the police, we can restore law and order. If we got into predictive policing and use the same Palantir system that the New Orleans PD started using back in 2012 and stopped it in 2018, only because so many people were getting arrested and they were afraid to tell the court system how they found out what these people were doing in secret.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. So we have to discover what is being done in secret. whether it's by government ministers, opposition ministers, whether it's by police, army, whoever it's being done by, if it's illegal, Palantir can ferret it out. And once it's discovered, then your NIB and MOCA and the rest of them can then analyze it, build a case behind it, without the public ever knowing the source that it came from or where it started, where they got initial information to start specific investigations.
Hey, you know what? I was hoping that we would get some questions or comments from our listening and viewing audience, but I'm reading some emails here. People are riveted to the things that are being said, and so they just want to hear and listen, learn, and understand. That's okay. Again, we only have a few more minutes. The number is 667-369-8569. Mr. Tavares, you have a question for the good gentleman before we wrap this thing up? We have less than 5 minutes.
The question I have from Sir Nelson is this: at 7 o'clock, if you're not busy, can we go on to my channel and speak some more about this, and also speak some more about the TikTok issue? Is Beijing having TikTok as a spying machine in the world?
Well, yeah, I have no problem, but I would have to limit it to an hour because I have to check in with the hospital, as you know.
Yes.
You know, I told him give me till 7. So it's going to be 6 years shortly, but I can do some time. I can. That's no problem.
All right, no problem. Fireman, you have any parting words for the good gentleman here before we wrap this thing up?
Are you hearing me?
Yes.
All right. Mr. Nelson, you
Yes,
talk
sir.
about the deep diving and the dark world, the dark web. In terms of you doing some work on that, to flirt out more information and to get to some level of conclusion, who would have to commission you and your team to do that?
Basically, any honest citizen that wants to make an impact against crime and corruption. The NIA could do it, Dr. Monroe. Any law firm could do it. We'll work with different sources. We have done a lot of cases that people get ripped off Bitcoin and other stuff like that. And we have tracked down the funds, found the people, but it's hard to do recovery on Bitcoins. If it has to do with corruption, we can expose people who you suspect of being corrupted and tell you exactly who they're talking to. We can monitor them for up to 30 days.
Good.
We can do all kinds of stuff. It just depends on what you're looking for and what you ask us to do. But we have to do it without violation.
The financing. The financing.
I didn't hear.
Fireman, this not gonna be able to take the question.
Yeah, I was asking the financing. The financing.
Yeah.
The financing to carry out such a task, is it readily available from donor agency? And if so, who are the agencies that
just
give
give-
the funds?
One word to that, as we're almost out of time. The answer is it's readily available, and who would be responsible for discharging this?
The person asking has to finance.
Okay.
If it's an agency and they want to finance it, fine. We don't refuse money from anybody unless it's they're doing it for some unscrupulous reasons.
Good. All right. Listen, we're gonna have to stop it there. I want to thank my listening audience, thank the viewing audience. We had some technical difficulty, but we worked through that. Want to thank Brother Nelson. I said part one because I
It's
know
6
very well
o'clock.
you've got a lot to say, and so we're going to have part two, we're going to have part three, we're going to have part four, because there are lots of people in the Jamaican government that we need to expose. He just touched the surface today, ladies and gentlemen. Want to thank Conrad Fiyan O'Brien for joining us and asking some very, very pertinent and significant questions. Likewise, to my co-host today, Jeffrey, the defender, Tavares. Thank all of you for being here, and we look forward to seeing all of you, as well as the listening audience, next week on www.reggaeglobalradio.com at next week Saturday between 4 and 6. Thank you.
I want to say
Thank you.
thanks to the people who are watching on the MekWi Talk Jeffrey Tavares YouTube channel. Thank you all for watching.
All right, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. See you next. Find the Monday morning Newstalk 93 FM from 9 until 12.